And we back. We back. Your favorite voices over here. All right. On the field, off the field.
We got your game plan.
This is the Val and Ange Show, and welcome to episode 3. Ange always asking me, how do I want to start? In episode 3, you know, and it goes week by week where your mindset can change, but, you know, the game is always changing as well, too. And, you know, Ange asked me the question of, how do you prepare? How do you prepare for your off season? How do you prepare for the postseason? How do you prepare for the season? I mean, we're athletes. And I had to think about it. I'm like, wait a minute. If I stay ready, I never got to get ready. I never got to want to find a new way to prepare. I just got to stay consistently committed to the process. And when I'm consistently committed to the process, I never lose sight of my CCP.
What's CCP?
Consistently committed to the process.
Right? That's new.
Yeah,
did you dream about that?
I told you, right? When I dream, I wake up, I write it down, and you know,
bad.
we just we put our minds into the movement of your bodies as athletes. And as a now trainer, you know, performance trainer, performance coach, you know, mentor, father, you know, I have to always be on my CCP, and I have to be committed to you as an athlete, and likewise for Ange. How do you stay prepared, you know, for your off seasons? How do you stay prepared for your athletes?
I got to fill my cup up first. I was just going to say something before you were going to ask me those questions. I didn't know you were coming at me with the questions, which is funny because, yeah, you definitely did. Definitely fill my cup up first. Definitely got to move my body. Definitely learning that the more that I put into my mindset, that I'm a better version for the people I mentor, for my clients, and for anybody I'm talking to through workshops and speaking engagements. So I think that's important. But something that I've read recently, and why I wanted to bring this to us today, is like, you can't get ready for game day on game day. Mm-hmm. And I think we're not committed to that whole process as a whole, as far as, you know, what does it look like in the off season for you physically, mentally? What does it look like in practices? There has to be consistency. And I think when you get to college, I think it happens more, but we need to flip that script in high school about the importance of it.
Let's stay on that one there, because you said you can't get prepared for the game on game day. You got to be prepared for that. And I constantly try to beat this into the heads of today's athletes.
Yeah.
And that your training should be harder than the game. Because come game day is payday. Game day is where you get to have fun. You get to go out and compete, you know, and fight for a victory. And the preparation, day in and day out, week in and week out. And let's talk about the high school athlete. You know, the high school athlete probably has it, you know, a little bit more intense because they're in school for 8 hours a day. Mm-hmm. Right? Then we're asking them to come out on the field and think. So to be a high school athlete, to be a student athlete, period, your commitment has to be enhanced 10 times more, you know, than the average student athlete walking around. You know, so to be a student athlete in today's world is, you know, a privilege. You know, it's an honor because of the workload that's demanded of you. You know, and then to have to go out on the field and think for another 2.5 hours about a play, about, you know, a scheme, you know, and then translate that on a game day, you know, where sometimes, you know, within like the girls lacrosse and field hockey and the basketballs, they're playing almost 2-3 games a week.
Yeah.
You know, so your processing has to be rapidly fast, you know, and you have to have so much data stored into you in such a short amount of time not only athletic wise, but also, as a student.
Yeah.
And that's not something that's easy to do. Not everybody can do it.
No, and you're a high school kid. You have, like you said, the school day, and you go into all, and then you have practice, and then you have games, and then you have travel, and then you have performance. And then if you want to tap into your mental side of it, you have, those reps. So I think that even though it seems impossible, it's possible the way you set yourself up for success. So what are some ways you think that they can set themselves up to be able to sustain it?
Well, you said the word repetition. This is something that has to be practiced. This is something that has to be taught. So you have to consistently rep it out, as boring as it might seem, until it becomes second nature to you. And once it becomes second nature to you, now you start to say, okay, we can add a little something to it. But you have to rep it out, and you have to practice.
When you say rep it out, I think let's define rep it out, because I think the most important rep that a high school athlete has to take is how they talk to themselves.
Oh, 100%.
You agree?
100%.
I thought you were going to say like lifting.
No. Lift
I'm sorry.
No. We got to win every rep in the weight room.
Yes.
When I mean by rep it out, you have to be not robotic, but you have to be repetitious in your movements. You got to be consistent in your movement, because once you start to, and you have to see yourself in certain situations. You have to visualize yourself in certain situations. You have to visualize yourself being successful. That's you talking to yourself without saying anything.
Yes.
And once you start to grasp a hold of yourself and you start to understand yourself, then you can say, okay, let's ramp it up a little bit more. But if we don't find the avenue of wanting to understand ourselves, you're always going to be in the pursuit or in the chase to find balance.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, when balance is right in front of you, sometimes you got to slow yourself down in order to go faster.
Yes.
As crazy as it sounds. But you need that balance throughout your life. And we all fall victim of it. We all get thrown on that rubber bridge where we don't know which way we're going. But if you once you find that balance to yourself, then you can start adding to it, and then all of a sudden you start to see more positivity latch onto you. Yeah. As well as how you impact your teammates.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how would you look at it? How would you look at repetition?
I think the reps have to happen so that you don't think about them on game day. They're already been taken care of. The only thing that you should be is in your flow state when you're ready to compete, and because everything else has been taken care of. I always think about Kenny Pickett when he spoke at our symposium, and how he said he didn't use the quote out there that preparation is when luck, opportunity meets luck, or whatever that quote is. He said, I work hard all the time in order to be prepared for the moment, so I know I'm ready. And I think that's huge, But I also think that if you're constantly doubting yourself in the pursuit, in the day in and day out of being a high school kid, an athlete, the training, then that will catch up to you on game day. You can't just turn it on. I think in those pursuits, your mindset has to be, I can do this. Like, small example today, when, I ran out of gas today, and I texted Val, and he sends me a text, and he says, rise and grind. And I was like, yeah, rise and grind. I just ran out of gas, and I really wanted to be a martyr. And then you were like, you okay? And I was like, yeah, I am. And he's like, yeah, of course you are. And then I knew in that moment that that's what I have to tell myself. I'm okay. I'm on the side of the road. I have 3 dogs. They're breathing heavily. It smells in my car, and I'm waiting for the gas. And what did I do was, because I knew better than to let it go with my thoughts, I was like, okay, I'm going to do some work in this car right now on my phone. How lucky are we? My phone died. Then my phone died. And I sat on the side of the road. But then I got home, and the day didn't get away from me the way it normally would. So, like, every single time you're going out to compete, whatever that is, if you're prepared with your thoughts, you're ready to roll, I think. Yeah. Today was a perfect example for me that I've changed that. For me, one little thing you said to me. Yeah, you do. Yeah. Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. So when you're talking to yourself, you should be listening to yourself and hear yourself constantly say, yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right?
Yep.
Simple.
But you got to listen to it too. Like
Listening.
They gotta, they gotta listen to those positive reinforcement words, and because that person might not always be there all the time, so you got to hear that cycle back into your brain. It's like when you get put into a pressure situation or anxiety kicks in. How do you and you're by yourself? How do you settle yourself down?
Yeah.
It's a pressure situation. Something that's in that moment can easily spiral you down, or you can say, I've been here already.
Yes.
I know how to cope with it.
What do you see some of your best athletes do when they're in those situations or have spoken to you about it?
Like, I see them either one break down, and I'm like, okay, well, that's not the answer, but that's just a sign of you pouring something out. Okay, get it out of your system. That's pain that needs to leave you. Let it leave. And then now you got to understand, apply pressure back to that pain.
Oh, I like that.
And when you apply pressure back to that pain, you're going to heal yourself, because it's like, okay, this will never happen again. It's like Tim Tebow when he lost that game in Florida. Then they got smoked by like Auburn or something like that, and he was crying on national television saying, "This would never happen again. I promise you, Florida Nation, I would never let you down again." And he put a team on his back, but he put so much pressure on his back, but he prepared himself for those moments, because he knew the price that him and his teammates paid. And when you pay a price, when you go through the trenches, when you go through that, in that foxhole of war and training with your teammates, I've been there already. If I'm hurt, somebody's going to drag me along. Somebody's going to have my back.
Yes.
And that's always a great feeling to have when somebody has your back, that you've went in the trenches with. That way you don't feel like you're out there by yourself. And now you make it through it and you're calm. You're like, yes, I've been there.
Yes.
And sometimes in a game situation, losing, when you feel like you're at the top and you lose a game that you ain't supposed to, sometimes you got to, not sometimes, but all the time, you got to date back to how you prepared.
Yeah.
Because you did something that week that lost you that game.
Yeah.
You didn't prepare as if you were the underdog. So, I mean, it is a broad statement that no matter what level you play at, you always have to stay ready, so that way you never have to get ready.
Dropping dimes.
Learn from the best.
I like the part that you, like, well, we talked often, but one of the things that was frustrating you a couple weeks ago was like, how do we get these kids to commit and do things that they don't want to do, and understand that they've got to show up for the workouts, and when they show up, they're giving the 110% so that they can be ready when it matters. We're seeing a lack of commitment across the board, I think, in athletics from kids. And I don't know what the magic formula is, but I think it is tapping into that why of, why are you playing and what do we plan to get out of this? And it doesn't have to just be the why that I want to play professional, I want to play college. It's the why of when I set my mind to do something and I am part of a team, I am committed 100%. And this makes me better in all aspects. Yeah. I think that's something I've been thinking a lot about, is like, well, you might not want to do this later on, or maybe this is just something that you're doing to train. Well, then train as hard as you can, because that mentality carries you through the rest of your life. Would you agree?
I 100% agree. And
well, I don't think I'd let you disagree, actually.
No, I mean, there's some things that I will disagree on, but that I have to agree on, because once again, it comes back to repetition, and you might fail on so many reps, and then you start to see the success in one rep. Now, if you can win that one rep that one time, you can win it all the time. And you have to be willing to make the sacrifices to do that.
Yeah.
You know, and it's days where we don't want to get up and do anything. Right? We're human. But if you're really committed to yourself and to the road of your success, you're going to get up and you're going to give it 100%, and your 100% might be 80 that day.
Yeah.
You know, and if you're willing to go through that pain of, you know, feeling tired, you're going to remember that in the back end of a game where you're like, I'm not tired because I've already been here. Right? This is fun. And in a close game, you got to find yourself in order to pull that game out. And you might not be the person that make that play. You know, it might be somebody else. You know, I'm watching the NBA playoffs. My son is like, Dad, we got to watch the next game. I'm like, why? Watch the basketball. All right. Well, he says, let's watch the next game. And all of a sudden, all right, Knicks are down 2-0. Same thing with OKC and the Timberwolves. You know, and you can see it in somebody's movement. If they're all there or if they're not.
You mean all in?
Yeah, but if they're all there, are they all in? Right? Like I'm watching. I'm watching the Timberwolves game last night. I'm like, Anthony Edwards is not going to have a good game tonight, and I like him. I think he's the closest thing to the next best thing.
Yeah.
You know, just the way he approaches the game with no fear, no carelessness. I mean, he's relentless in how he attacked the rim last night. I'm like, I think he put all his energy into the game before that because he was tired. And OKC just dialed up the defense on him. Yeah. They prepared for him.
What is, I mean, this is going to sound stupid, but what is OKC? Is that a new team that came around?
That's the Thunder.
Oh,
Thunder
okay.
struck Oklahoma City.
Did that always exist, like when I was a kid? Were they somebody else?
No, there were something else.
I don't watch the NBA often. I mean, I like the Knicks. I was a Mark Jackson,
Knicks
number
are
13 guy.
Knicks are rolling. I mean, I think that's an equal matchup. But is when we talk about a short turnaround, you got to be prepared in a short turnaround. Yeah. You know, and in these playoffs, you got to be prepared. You know, and it's just like anything else. They have to prepare rapidly fast and adjust their game to play the same team again.
Yeah, that's like we said in the beginning. We see that with high school.
You know,
yeah,
it's like baseball. They play how many games in the World Series, and they got to prepare for multiple different pitchers. Yeah, I was like, okay, this guy can throw 99 to 100. This person here is a lefty pitcher. It comes out differently, you know. And if you do your film study, if you evaluate the person you're going to win, but you evaluate yourself. Okay, how did I react in this moment? Like it's where like coaches look for things on the sidelines on what's going to tick this person off, you know, and then we start to see an argument take place on the sideline on the opposing team. Okay, now we know we got them, you know, and coaches look for that, and they look for every angle for them to be successful.
Yeah, definitely.
You know. You're a coach, you know, you were a player. How was your preparation? What was your preparation like, you know, leading up to a game?
I would definitely say that there was a lot of visualizing myself doing it and an attitude about me that I don't lose. So that was just like, that's exactly what it needed to be. But looking back, and part of the reason I do what I do now is that I think I could have been more successful if I put the work in. I let my mind get in the way. So that, to be totally honest. But now when I see my top athletes, actually I like the process of watching elite athletes become even more elite by focusing on that, you know, how did I prepare for this moment? And it wasn't just, you know, I trudged through the practices or I decided that I was going to show up. It was an intention to be there and put that work in. I mean, you look at, talking about sports, and you love this. I'm sure you watched the UNC game. That was the most watched, final that Girls Lacrosse have had, which is incredible. But you look at what they do
They stifle you, man.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
They're like little annoying bees that just keep coming at you.
Every one of them is, on that same level of commitment, which leads me into one thing. Is like, how on the high school level, because this is a question that I get a lot from my girls, is on the high school level, you don't have the same level of commitment from each athlete, because some athletes are there. And rightfully, they deserve to just be there to be involved in something. So how do we really have everybody come along in that space? What would you say is
it's a developmental process. It's like, if you look at it like a business, you got the CEO, then you got the COO, and then you have everybody that trickles down after it. Right? And on a team, you're going to have somebody that's going to designate themselves as a captain, or the coaches designate them as the captain. So the coach is the CEO. Right. Then you have your coaching staff, right, and then you have the player development, and then you have that captain. That person, is the go-to, whether they're the star player or they're the one that just leads by example and don't say a word, and your preparation for that one, you can't have an off day, even if you are having an off day.
Yeah.
But it comes back to, what's your mindset to how we're going to play the game?
Yeah.
And for you playing at the next level, and me playing at the next level, that word commitment doesn't just happen. That word preparedness doesn't just happen for each of us. And what do I mean by that? We ask for the little things. Imagine if we did the little things, and that's simple communication. If we talk and we're being annoying with how we're talking, all right, you were a goalie, yes?
Yes.
All right. The defense has to respond to the goalie.
Yes.
All right. And
I'm a talker.
And the terminology, but you have to be. And we ask for that from our goalies, especially, and girls across. Our goalies can't shut up. You're the backbone of defense. You're the last line of defense for the defense. So you have to continue to keep talking. Where's the ball? Right? Because everybody else is in constant motion.
Yeah.
And your eye is always on the ball. For me, preparing for a football game as a defensive player, I still kept my linebacker instincts. I had to know where every person was, what formation they was coming out in, and I just prepared myself for every which moment until I got it to a point where I could have my hand on the ground and I could tell you if this guy's coming in motion, I know what play is coming.
Yeah.
All right, could I be wrong? But if I'm wrong,
all
right, I'm gonna be wrong 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And if I didn't do that, if I didn't spend more time in the film room at this point, it's not even about the physicality of the game. It was more so for me the mental part of the game. I had to see things before it happened. I had to visualize myself making plays. Do you visualize yourself making plays as athletes? And we talked to them. I talked to the athletes in the gym about this. You have to see yourself in the moment. And if you don't see yourself in the moment, you're never going to experience that moment before you get there. And I don't care what your emotions are like right now. They're going to be all over the place because you're dog tired. You don't know whether to think, whether to stop, whether to cry. All right. And you're going to have these moments where I'm going to bring you through the ringer and you're not going to like it. And you're going to want to cuss me out. You're going to want to yell. I'm just like, yeah, I'll get it out.
Yeah.
Right? But just know that you're going to make it through because you have a screaming lunatic at you.
Yeah.
That wants you to be great.
Yeah.
In this moment right here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they have to understand that. And once you prepare that, once you put that into each athlete individually, when they go back to their team, right, the little things add up to the bigger things.
Yes.
And the big thing is winning.
Yeah.
Right? Because you can't be a Kobe Bryant, a Michael Jordan, a LeBron James, or or a Tom Brady if you're not having fun being annoying with the little things. The little things matter.
Yeah.
But
what if you have a kid that, cannot afford to have a performance trainer that's going to push them like that? Or you have a kid that is just on the team because...
they got to watch this video. They got to watch this video and find their way to the gym because it's not always about the money.
But no, I'm just saying, like, in general, like, you have a kid on your team. I'm just trying to get you to say the magic word. If you're committed, a kid is committed. Kids will be committed because of another C word that has to happen in their programs. What is it?
Consistency.
Consistency. There's another one. So, like,
what are we playing?
I don't know. I'd love to write it down because some people aren't going to see this, but your pen sucks and I can't make it work. How the hell did you do that?
Just push the top down.
The
little things.
Oh, no, you didn't push the top down. You pushed the holder down.
Whatever that thing is.
All right. Anyway, if you have a culture of commitment, then even if you might not be the guy, the captain, or the player that is going to play in the next level, or you are playing to be part of something, you will buy in and do the little things. That was pretty good.
I like that word culture, which brings me back to my first coaching days, where this kid, he wasn't the fastest, wasn't the biggest, but he was dance from the smartest. And when he spoke, you listened.
Yeah.
You know, and he carried himself in such a high demand for greatness. And I remember I told you he wasn't the biggest, he wasn't the fastest, but he was the smartest. And I made him my Mike linebacker. And the kid went off for about 117 tackles. And as a junior. And we spent the entire summer together just talking football to a point where he understood what I was going to say before I even said it. And he knew the check before we even got there.
Yeah.
And we took a team from, or they 1-9 at the time, to winning the Mercer County, and 2 years in a row, and having the number one defense, because he set the culture. And he created that culture. He set the standard, but he created the culture because everybody else had to migrate to him, because when he spoke, everybody listened. Yeah. And when whatever he said, everybody echoed it. Yeah. So they were always on the same page. But that's
I mean, that's, you know, one of the things I say to coaches recently is how bought in is your least talented player determines the culture of your team. You can get the talented players to buy in, the really good ones that have the stats that put the time in. But if that one kid that you're talking about is bought in as well, that maybe doesn't see the field as much, then you have a good culture. Because then everyone's going along with you and committing to the process. Because I feel like I remember being a player and just being like looking around and you're working your butt off. Maybe you're down, and like if you look around and you see all your teammates busting their butt and you're the one that's not, if that doesn't click something for you, then like I don't know what does, but that has to happen. Like that I think that's important, and that comes down from the culture of the team. Like, are you all bought in? And that's where you know, I've been going to some of the games, you know, went to the Shore Conference final and all that kind of stuff, like for lacrosse, and going to some softball games, and you can tell when a team is completely bought in, you know, and the cracks.
Oh yeah, well, definitely when a team is 100% bought in. Yeah. I don't think a coach has to say a word at that point, because they're just they can't control it at that point. This is, you know, they're just at a point where this team is now on a train, and all they're doing is just keep throwing coal in the fire. Yeah. And it just keeps fueling them. Yeah. You know, and I think that comes down to, you know, the hunger for success. Yeah. If you want to be successful, not just as an individual but as a team, you know, your appetite has to be different towards everything y'all do. Yeah. And it can be a simple captain's practice. It can be a walkthrough. You have to have that laser type focus, you know, to see the end result. And work for it. Because if you don't, and if you're just going right to the end result, You're going to get beat along the way.
Well, yeah, that's what I was just going to
And
say.
you're never going to know how to respond or how to bounce back because you're so blinded by the end result.
Yeah. And that's what coaches do. They choose. And it's not a fault of their own. It's just the way we are. You choose wins. You focus on the wins instead of the culture.
Yeah.
And I think when you can build the culture first, the wins come, in my opinion. That's what I've seen with successful teams. But then you also have the teams that are going to have the talent, and their horses are just going to be faster, stronger, and tougher.
Well, would you say standard and culture goes hand in hand?
Yes, because in your culture you have standards, and if you don't meet those standards, you don't belong on that team. And I think that kids will want to buy into standards that are consistent and standards that there's communication, like you said. You said all the little things: communication, consistent standards, and there is a caring about each one of those players, from the kid we talked about that might not get in all the way to your star that might win the game for you. If those three things are there, it's a game changer, in my opinion. But I don't know how much we can focus on that. We go back to the high school space of do we have the coaches trained enough to think like that or to want to put that work in? Building relationships are hard. To me, it's a game.
So let's say you're going to take a high school coaching job.
Yeah.
In a new program.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And your season starts in 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
What's the first thing you're going to do as a new head coach?
I'm going to get to know each and every one of the kids and find out what their coaching style is. That's the first thing I'm going to do.
No one knows how we get along.
Yeah, that's the bottom line. I mean, I get to do it on a one-on-one version now, and I'm not going to say that as a coach I was always good at that, especially, coming out of college and being a hothead and thinking I had to win, and coaching where I coached humbled me. And I'm glad that happened to me, because then when I got to know each and every kid, then you get them the buy-in. And then, I'm a yeller. I mean, the things that I was able to say and get away with in my coaching career would blow your mind. But I take some of them back. I would love to talk to some of the girls again. However, you know what I mean? Like, I think that what would be the first? Well, you just said you would get to know each kid.
Well, in the realistic moment, the kids have to understand that they are always under evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'll tell them is be themselves, because I'm going to evaluate you from afar, even when you think I'm not evaluating you.
Yeah.
Because I want to know the character of you, who, and then you get to learn more about the person.
Yeah.
Because they're humans, and you got to learn how, how they learn.
Mm-hmm.
How do they react to tough coaching? Do they react to tough coaching
yes.
as an individual? Because I can be tough on somebody else, but I can't be tough on such and such.
Yes.
Because that can put them in a dark place.
Mm-hmm.
I need everybody to be at 100%. And no, I'm not treating people differently.
Yes.
It's just that I'm coaching you differently in order to get the same result.
Yeah.
And my big thing is, as a team, I would test the level of commitment to the program.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I got 25 guys showing up consistently to off-season workout, but I got 70 signed up,
mm-hmm.
I'm doing something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you have outside trainers like me or
mm-hmm.
Your parents got you pulled in this. Listen, at the end of the day, we got to find a way to play and win together. So if I don't have you together as a team in my presence, I hope y'all together as a team without me there.
Yeah.
Because if you take me away from the puzzle as the coach, once you set the culture, once you set the standard,
mm-hmm.
you're going to win. But
mm-hmm.
if there's none of that, and now you bring me in, and now I got to spend time trying to reel it all back together and try to sew it back together and make this a masterpiece.
Yeah.
And it's going to take time.
Yeah.
It's going to take time to build a program that stands for something and that has that culture, and you adjust with it.
Yeah.
You adjust with the time, you know, because you want the kids to have that certain swagger.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you want them to play the game and have fun,
Mm-hmm.
not be robotic, you know, and you know, you love to see them high five and chest bump and, you know, give me a little dance here. I'm all for that because that's excitement in the game for them.
Yeah.
You know, and just have fun playing the game that you love to play in this moment because the next level might not be there.
Yeah.
You know, and that could be a whole nother topic why the next level might not be there based off of, you know, certain things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but you got to have fun with these moments here because these moments you can never get back again.
Yeah.
You know, spending time with your high school teammates that you played all the way through Pop Warner, AYF, all the way up until this moment here. That's a brotherhood, you know, a family that you can never change. And some people you keep around, some people, that's what it is.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And it's fun.
It is fun. Yeah. I mean, there's so many ways to go and think about it, but I think the other piece of it, now I got my head spinning because this will be the first fall not coaching for me in 25 years, and I'm okay with it. I think I don't have the time, like we talked about, but I think I'm older, and I think that where I want to, you know, fit in is different than just being like the head coach of one school. You know, like we said, we want to make that influence around a lot of people, but I definitely think the involvement of parents, regardless, and maybe people will not be okay with what I'm about to say, but the involvement of parents in your culture, I think, is very important. I think we expect these teenage kids to go home and communicate certain things to their coaches or to their parents, and then their parents have their viewpoint of things based on their own perspective. And I think it gets messy in the middle if coaches aren't maybe sending an email or briefly communicating about your style. I just think that in this day and age, things get skewed, and we need to keep it straight because, like you said, your parents aren't allowing you, okay, there's 70 guys on your roster, 25 are coming, and 15 are saying, no, you have to work this summer, and that's just a sport you play. Well, how about if that coach calls that parent and is like, come on, let's work together here. Like, this kid needs to be here. How can I help? That changes like that. I watched it on my own teams.
It's the little things. It's the little things through communication.
Yeah. I mean, it's what it is. I mean, and I know parents can get crazy, but I mean, I'm not a parent of my own child. But I do know there's a reason why parents get crazy, whether it's, you know, their own hang-ups or whatever it is, but they're part of this journey, this process of you coaching young adults. Like, it's a mentoring job. I don't know. I think if that can switch a little bit, but that would really help the commitment.
Yeah.
Because you need if the kid's committed and your parents aren't, then you have a kid who goes home every night and he's got to hear his parents complain about the coach and what the coach is doing wrong. And then that kid feels like a divorced child all the time. So now
it's like three rams trying to butt their heads.
Exactly.
As opposed to staring at each other and coming up with a solution on how to navigate around this and make it work.
Yeah.
But it comes back to communication, you know, and having an open door policy.
Yes.
You know, and a respect factor, you know, for what we're trying to accomplish as a team, you know, and it's a team because especially at the high school level and under, you know, this takes an army in order for this ship to move. And I'm big on parent involvement.
Yeah.
You know, especially into the programs. Like, your parents got to be involved within the program and let the coaches coach, but you have your part as a parent as well too.
Yes.
You know, make sure your athlete is on time. If you want to stick around and watch practice, if you question things on why your son or daughter is not getting equal playing time, well, sit back and watch practice because, you know, every child has an opportunity to showcase their ability.
Yeah.
You know, okay, and it comes back to you're always under evaluation.
Yeah.
We're evaluating you, so okay, well, we're going to give you a shot. You know, we want to move you up on the depth chart, so that way, you have your opportunity now. If you go out there and you stare like a deer in headlights, maybe the lights are just too big for you right now.
Yeah.
But you have to keep throwing them in the fire at that point to embrace that atmosphere.
Yeah.
Running out of a stadium that has 113,000 people in there, you can easily just look around and block it all out and focus on your moment now, and there's opportunity that you have in front of you to go out there and showcase your ability.
100%. That's so we're getting ready to wind it down. What would you leave them with today with preparation, commitment, and what we talked about? CCP.
Oh yeah, well definitely. You definitely got to have your CCP. But that one word focus, it can take you.
You can't go into focus today. We got to do it next time.
No, but they got to focus. they got to focus on being consistent.
Yes.
And when you're focused on your consistent attitude towards how you look at things, you stay committed to the process. So you have to consistently be committed to the process in order to handle whatever is thrown at you. And you got to have fun with it. So stay in the moment, have fun with your moments, learn from your mistakes in the moment, and then continue to keep moving, because it is a process. And as you go through the process, you're preparing yourself for game day, and have fun with the moments. That's what I say.
That's what you say?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess we'll go off of focus a little bit. It just say where focus goes, energy grows. So if you're focused on all aspects of your game, that's where you're going to improve. But if you're focused on the negative aspects, then that's what's going to, kind of come up for you, like we always talk about. So what are we going to do next week?
We're going to pick up right where we left off from.
Yeah.
And we're going to hit y'all with something different next week, but we're going to definitely give y'all a little taste of more of what the word focus means in the light of us as humans, but also as athletes. And I'm going to try to convince Ernst to bring back perspective. I love that perspective. I just started talking about that, the perspective.
Again.
But that comes back to that focus. I got something for that.
Yeah, he does.
All right, till next time. All right, the Val and Ann Show, episode 3. All right, remember, I'm Val.
I'm Ange. Have a great week.